Is a war between the golden goddesses possible? And if so, could it be already happening? Is Tears of the Kingdom set in Hyrule's end times? What was the purpose of Hyrule's creation in the first place? Was the Mises curse fully intended from the beginning? Today we will be exploring these questions, so please watch until the end to find out. Sit back, relax, and enjoy! First things first, we will need to lay out all the pieces, starting with the Triforce. Triforce isn't just an omnipotent wish-granting relic, it is a physical representation of three divine forces. Power, wisdom, and courage are qualities associated with the spirits of the Demon King, the Princess, and the Hero, stuck in an eternal cycle of rebirth and violence attributed to the Mises curse, much like a snake eating its own tail. However, it is my belief that even without the curse, these three powers would have manifested as a conflict anyway. More on that in just a moment. In fact, power, wisdom, and courage are much more than just qualities tied with ancient souls. The Demon King, the Princess, and the Hero are merely their physical manifestations, much like the Triforce pieces, which they sometimes possess. Each of the forces is representative of different things, which we will explore one by one. But first, if you're enjoying the content, you can subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. It would really help me out. Alright, back to it. Power is often interpreted as the evil one of the Triforce pieces. While I understand where this is coming from, it is tied to the Demon King himself after all, I tend to disagree. Power isn't inherently evil. Much like the other two forces, it is perfectly neutral. It does, however, represent evil, among other things. This is an important distinction. It changes power from malicious and antagonistic into something more akin to a force of nature. Not always pleasant, but ultimately necessary for the world to function properly. There are multiple attributes which can be assigned to power. A lot of them, well, most of them, are negative: evil, death, chaos, destruction. Others aren't: action, fire. When viewed through this lens, it suddenly makes way more sense why in the creation myth, Din, the goddess of power, was the one which created the dead matter, kickstarting the process. Power is a force which attempts to revert the world to that state, one devoid of life and structure. However, where there is no structure, there is space to create a new one. As such, power is de facto a cosmic, unfeeling reset button. While power represents savage destruction, wisdom stands for order. It is only natural then that these two are always at odds with each other. What is notable, however, is that between just the two of them, wisdom is always in the losing position due to that which it represents: law, order, science, civilization, eyes, passive. Did you ever wonder why Zelda seems to always barely get to do anything in these games? This is why. Wisdom's very nature is to wait, resist, and withstand, and that's exactly what the princess does, time and again. Go into hiding and wait for the hero in Ocarina, guide him when he appears. Go into hiding the moment she realizes who she is in Wind Waker and wait for Link to confront Ganondorf. Stay in the castle and withstand the occupation, while Link and Midna take care of the problem in the Twilight Princess. Provide aid at all costs if asked. Interestingly, there is a certain pluralism to wisdom. As I've said before, Among the things it represents is civilization, a collective. This feeds right back into wisdom being the passive element. A civilization is a cacophony of thousands of voices. There is no single will which would align with all of them at once. An attempt to do so would paralyze all decision making. We can conclude then that there is no such thing as a singular will of the collective, leaving wisdom, the singular entity representing it, unable to take action, at least under normal circumstances. This is why Zelda is never a queen, always a princess. A person who is technically at the top of a nation, but also one who lacks the authority to direct it. In the creation myth, Nehru, goddess of wisdom, gave the world law and order, the foundation of civilization. As we've discussed, wisdom is a force which seeks to enforce these, keeping that foundation intact. As such, it is a force which tends towards protection of the status quo for as long as possible. While it often feels like power and wisdom are the natural opposites of each other, the yin and the yang, and courage doesn't fit into this relationship, this is not the case. In fact, courage is as much, if not more, of an opposite of power than wisdom is. Almost like, instead of yin and yang, we were dealing with a triangle of sorts. Weird. Just like the other two forces, courage represents a selection of things: life, hope, lightning, nature, reaction. That last one especially makes courage very peculiar. It lies dormant for as long as wisdom remains the dominant force in Hyrule. If the royal family is in control and the demon king is contained, there is no legendary hero in sight. His appearance is directly related to the rise of power and subsequent threat to wisdom. If Ganondorf does as much as raise his head, the hero appears, just like that, at a snap of the fingers. It is a reaction to power, well, rising in power. God, that name's problematic. In contrast to the other two forces, courage is not interested to fight over control for itself. Instead, it helps to offset the balance back in favor of wisdom, to stop the destruction and allow the rebirth. Courage is also a complementary force for wisdom. Law and order are great, but in of themselves, they are just as dead as the burnt earth power leaves in its wake. Courage is the force responsible for life, and as such, it is the one which allows wisdom's designs to get in motion. It is required to facilitate wisdom's extended dominance. Again, this all makes sense in context of the creation myth. It was Farore, goddess of courage, who gave life to the world, thus finishing the act of creation. It is only natural that courage, the force representing life and a result of Farore's designs, would be the one to uphold them and oppose the powers, or rather power, that would threaten them. Thus, power and courage engage in a sort of push and pull relationship, one trying to revert the act of creation, the other protect it, with passive wisdom in between them. As I've already alluded to, the relationship between the three forces is never that of perfect balance. There is always one that reigns supreme. Whenever civilization is allowed to flourish, the dominant force is wisdom. Whenever the kingdom lies in ash and ruin, it is power. And when neither of these is true, and instead Hyrule is overtaken by the wildlife, then it is a rare example of the courage being the primary force. To illustrate this with an example, at the beginning of Ocarina of Time, wisdom is dominant. Then Ganondorf rises, and in the absence of both the hero and the princess, takes over, leading to the dominance of power and leaving central Hyrule in ashes, infested with undead monsters. In Breath of the Wild, the situation is a bit more complicated. As previously, the wisdom was the dominant force, until Calamity Ganon appeared. A brave stand was made, and failed, leaving power and wisdom locked in a struggle, like two snakes eating each other's tails. I wonder what that could mean. Because wisdom, in a rare act of defiance, stopped the spread of power, courage was left outside of the immediate conflict and allowed to slowly take Hyrule over as the wounded hero recovered, resulting in the ruins of war becoming overgrown and teeming with natural life. Breath of the Wild's Hyrule is melancholic, but also filled with hope for a new beginning, a thing which courage represents. Breath of the Wild is also especially interesting for its portrayal of dragons. They are spirits of the three divine forces. Even just visually, Dynral is surrounded by fire, and when looked up front, his horns resemble twisted fangs of a boar. Naydra flies in chill mist and wears a crown. Farosh produces sparks of electricity, and his single horn is weirdly reminiscent of the hero's cap. I believe these spirits to be directly reflective of the current state of their respective forces. Both Dynral and Naydra take only a single long path, however they both do it through deep chasms, which they likely carved themselves. Over time, strong winds surrounding flying dragons eroded the landscape, creating Tanagar Canyon and Lanayru Road respectively. This can be interpreted as power and wisdom, both literally leaving their marks on the land of Hyrule throughout ages, and continuing to do so despite Ganon and Zelda being locked away together in the castle. Both can still impact the outside world, though only to a limited extent. Zelda by guiding Link directly, Ganon by reviving his monsters and empowering them over time. The main difference between the two dragons is that Naydra succumbed to malice, while Dynral didn't. Perhaps this happened because Zelda's ongoing battle against Ganon is a losing one if she doesn't receive aid. Also, frankly, Dynral as the spirit of power might be straight up immune to malice to begin with. In contrast with the other two, Farosh is present in a variety of locations. He's seen in Faron, over Lake Hylia, and in Gerudo Highlands. Interestingly enough, Farosh never flies through any sort of chasm. The closest he gets is in Gerudo Highlands. The icy peak of Gerudo's summit is caved in, just a little, as if the dragon started carving it only recently. This makes sense. Power and wisdom are the forces which shape Hyrule, physically represented by canyons created by Naydra and Dynral. Under normal circumstances, courage does not do that. However, the circumstances are no longer normal, and so Farosh began to leave his mark on the land. Farosh is also the only one of the dragons able to appear not just from the portals in the sky, but also from underwater. This pits him directly against fiery Dynral, and further emphasizes his freedom of movement, his bond with the land. This all but confirms that courage is the dominant force in Breath of the Wild's Hyrule. The obvious follow-up question is, since these dragons are spirits, divine in nature, and they are dependent on the current state of Hyrule, does that power struggle impact the golden goddesses themselves? We are now leaving the interpretative and entering the heavy speculation territory, so brace yourselves. I think it might. Golden goddesses are pretty hands-off as far as deities go, so not much is known about them, but it is confirmed that they are directly tied to each of the forces. It is not a stretch to imagine that any of them growing in power would increase the influence of the respective goddess. And this might be exactly why it is by goddess's design that these cyclical shifts of power occur in the first place. Think about it. Power, wisdom, and courage are permanently sewn into the fabric of reality ever since the creation of Hyrule. This is not accidental. It was done with purpose, even though, as we've established prior, the conflicts and shifts between the forces were utterly predictable given what each of them is. However, if these shifts of power do indeed affect the goddesses, this means that each of them is granted a position of primary power every now and again through means outside of their immediate control. Perhaps Hyrule serves as a conflict management system for the golden goddesses. Perhaps that was the point of creating it in the first place. I mean, if the forces are anything to go by, I'd imagine the goddesses might be prone to bicker amongst themselves. Having an objective judge like that would be beneficial, at least in theory. That is why I said at the beginning that I believe these cycles would have happened regardless of the Miser's curse. They are part of Goddess's intended design. Frankly, it may very well be that the Demise's curse itself was fully preordained as a way to bring about these cycles and, with them, create mortal manifestations of the goddesses themselves. The only problem is that, if this is indeed the true purpose of Hyrule, this whole system is really bad at its job. The way it works, it rules Nehru to be in power for majority of the time and Farore to barely ever rise up. It is heavily skewed in favor of law and order. While Farore doesn't seem to mind, given her nature, Din might be unhappy with that result. So, hypothetically, Din could be very interested in breaking the curse right about now, and she probably has the power to do it. After all, if conflicts in Hyrule affect the goddesses, the reverse is also likely to be true. A fight between goddesses would reflect in the world of Hyrule, ending the cycle and thrusting the land into chaos. A scenario like that is nothing short of apocalyptic. It would literally end Hyrule as we know it. I do wonder though if this is more or less what we will be getting in Tears of the Kingdom, because looking at the latest trailer, well, I don't know about you, but it does look like the end times to me. If the dragons are indeed spirits, manifesting material realm's connection to the divine, then perhaps them disappearing into the portals in the sky and being seen below the Sky Islands on this eShop screenshot means that these aren't just any random pieces of land, but rather a hidden seat of the goddesses. I mean, The islands do feature a lot of gold and look pretty divine in of themselves. And now, they are falling apart, while the Hyrule Castle, the heart of the kingdom, rises up to meet them, surrounded by malice. Usually, courage isn't the dominant force in Hyrule. Usually, wisdom isn't fighting with power directly. And usually, when the hero defeats the Demon King, power's influence is subdued and balance shifts towards wisdom. So what if the events of Breath of the Wild are the first sign of something being very wrong between the goddesses? The balance in Hyrule shifts in an unusual direction, and then, after the hero is triumphant, the scales don't tip back towards wisdom as they are supposed to, but instead shift to power in Tears of the Kingdom as the very fabric of reality is revealed and begins to fall apart. Instead of a single snake eating its own tail, a unified cycle, we now have two, fighting for dominance and the right to shape the future of Hyrule. And what do you think? Could we be facing a crisis of an unprecedented scale in Tears of the Kingdom? Let me know in the comments! Also, if you'd like an alternative take on the Free Forces, you can check out this fantastic video by Moxie Woz. Thank you for watching and stay awesome!